Got it.
All right.
Okay.
So, well, apparently Raul needs no introduction.
You guys make too much of me, I'm telling you.
No, no. Well, I mean, you are the guy, right, that
The
wrote the
guy.
book.
I usually say that in jest.
Yeah. No. Well, trust me, that fire safety book is what it's all about. I mean, it's really an important piece of information that has to be presented.
Here's the shameless plug right here. Engine Company Fireground Operations.
Yeah. And how do we get that in front of the NFPA is the question. That's the
We just have to just keep chipping away. It is an NFPA book. You can
Yeah.
see the logo on the corner. And the other important document, which is already in revision, is NFPA 1700, which is the Guide for Structural Firefighting. And really, these are our two key pieces of information right here to drive the issue.
So,
and just briefly to just to inform those, the reason why this is an important document, because this is a standard. This is this is written technically more by NFPA than my book. I'm an author that they help partner with, but this is actually an NFPA book. And in the structural firefighting, which is basically laying out the best practices under high-rise firefighting, there's no mention of the spontaneous collapse of type 1 buildings under fire, and their recommendations for search and rescue and for providing the safety for the public is to defend in place or to relocate them somewhere else in the building, but it's never to evacuate the building. It isn't even mentioned in here to evacuate a high-rise building under fire. And that's why this is a key document, but we're jumping ahead.
well, I don't know how much people know or don't know about that, but I think if you want to, wait to go over it with us, or if you want to go right into it now, or
I'll wait. I'll wait for Chris. It sounds like Chris is going to join us. So
okay.
So you guys can cover some other business or whatever else.
Gene had something he really wanted to share with you. I don't know if you have it ready, Gene. And you're on mute.
Share screen.
You're on mute.
Yep, there we go.
As soon as he saw it, he's like, "Oh my God, I've got to show this to Raul."
Yeah, let's see if let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Not yet. Yes.
There we go.
So there was Chris responded with an article, or I sent an article to him, and then he responded about an article in Fire Engineering Magazine called "Selling Out the Investigation" by Bill Manning. And Bill Manning is amazing in that he was calling, let's see, I found a remove paywall, saying this is absolutely a crime scene. NFPA 921, we should be looking at this evidence. It shouldn't be taken off site. And he referenced another gentleman in a follow-up article here called WTC Investigation, a Call to Action on the Issue. So then I got up that article, and this blew my mind, if I may. So this person passed away, Francis Brannigan, but he also is basically saying, we need to look at this evidence. There's some serious things going on here, and we, the undersigned, agree with this. And what is not one of the names of the undersigned, but Glenn Corbett.
Oh,
Wow.
Right.
And I know, Raul, you're big with Glenn Corbett, so kind of very striking.
And this was very early, right? This was like 2000 and
December 2001 is the article.
2001, yeah.
Wow.
So back in the early days, it seems like he might have been on board with investigating this and may have had a talking to.
Wow.
He is, and I've been talking with Glenn Corbett. I talk to Glenn every week. I don't know, how do I get the main screen on this?
I'll stop sharing.
is this the main screen right here?
Yep.
So if you could spotlight him,
Yeah, Sue, you can spotlight him.
right
Let's
click
see
on his
where
picture
it's-
and say spotlight.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so Francis Brannigan,
Oh,
yeah, wrote this book. This is Brannigan's Building Construction for the Fire Service. This is the main building construction Bible, so to say, for the American Fire Service. Glenn Corbett now writes this book because Francis Brannigan died. At first, they were in partnership, and now Glenn has taken over this book. So this is Glenn's book, and he's working on the 7th edition right now because this is the 6th edition. By the way, there's tactical considerations on every chapter in here that I'm the author of those. So I work with Glenn on that. So basically Brannigan is now Corbett. They're one and the same because this is the title. There's some other building construction books, but they don't have the authority or the gravitas that this book has. And this is also an NFPA book. So I'm waiting for another copy of 7, the documentary 7. That is the DVD that was narrated by Ed Ashner, because that one really goes into depth on the University of Alaska studies. And I want Glenn to do that, to see that. Glenn is the one who always warns me to stay away from the wackadoodles. And what my strategy is to see him in person and to go over this with him in person, not on the phone, and get him to start with that, because he's a scientist, he's a professor, he's a teacher, and I think that DVD 7 is really hard to refute, no matter what your feelings are on this. He was very close to the New York City firefighters, and he is the technical editor for fire engineering and has been for years. So we lost a lot of personal friends in September 11th. And so it's always been a very visceral, open wound subject for him. But he has worked over the years. In the last presentation that he did at FDIC, he was moving a lot more closer to where we are right now, but he's not quite there yet. But I think that's kind of the next deal, is to work on Glenn. But he's a key person on this. And I think he would have a hard time refuting NFPA 1700, which he's not a fan of, by the way. Not everybody is a fan of this. These are recommendations. They're not law unless a particular municipality or a city adopts the NFPA 1700. They're standards and they're guidelines. But like anything else, everybody has their opinion. But yeah, anyway, that's how Corbett and Brannigan are linked together. So does that make sense?
Yeah, just one-
Go ahead.
just want to clarify one thing for you, Raul. Between, you mentioned 7 and Ed Asner,
Oh my God, I was just gonna say that.
you're talking about two different things. One was Architects and Engineers put out a 15-minute documentary starring Ed Asner. It's the Solving the Mystery of Building 7. But then what I think you mean to be referencing is a movie of the University of Alaska Fairbanks called 7.
Yes, that's the one I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ed
That one
Asner was
doesn't have
not in
Ed
this one.
Asner.
Ed Asner wasn't in that one? He
Nope.
doesn't
No,
narrate?
he did
He-
the little 15-minute one.
Yes, this one.
Richard, which one am I talking about?
Well, they're
Is
both
Richard Gate-
great.
No, but Richard is the one who gave it to me. Richard, which one did you give me? Oh, he's not on right now. See, he's just,
Unfortunately, I think what he's gave you is this one.
yeah,
Yeah.
7. Yeah, that's
'Cause
it.
that's the
Yes.
one with the whole scientific evidence and the Leroy Halsey study.
Okay, I stand corrected. You're correct. That's the one I'm talking
I
about.
just wanted to clarify, make it so you were
No,
clear.
that's good. That's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's the one. Sorry, Raul, I'm running to a doctor's appointment, but I'm on mute and listen.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify which DVD you sent me.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
the one.
The other one's much older. He wouldn't have sent you that recently.
Okay.
But it's still my
I think
favorite.
I think the 7 one is the key one. That's pretty hard for anybody to refute. And I think there's also a lot of extra quality and high quality video that was not included in Calling Out Bravo 7. So the video in that DVD is very compelling, very hard to refute, I think.
And have you seen explosive evidence?
I have not.
Okay, like as far as top movies, I think that one belongs there. And I mean, Richard, you should speak to it. It's yours. But
Yeah.
it covers all of the evidence for the 3 towers. And it just goes extremely into depth. And the extended version has the various individual interviews with all the scientists and the extended interviews that they took the clips from, and it's extremely powerful.
True.
Right, Richard?
True. So true.
You got to do more sales job than that.
I'll
Yeah.
send you a copy, Ro.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's definitely top 3 of all time.
Yeah, that's the original Blueprint for the Truth was the one I ran on community TV that got me in all kinds of trouble. But I think Explosive Evidence, if I had that, would have been a home run.
Yeah.
Well, the newest film, Peace, War, and 9/11, is fantastic too.
It is, but in terms of scientific evidence and hardcore facts and all of that stuff, which is maybe the best way to approach someone who is skeptical. Yeah, I think if you stick to the nuts and bolts of the scientific background, that's at least to start with, right?
Yep.
Depends on the audience, but any technical people that are out there, I mean, that's the first thing they want to see.
Yeah.
So, well, that's great.
Reading
So,
your bio was kind of interesting, Raul. Learned some things about you I didn't know before. Like you're a musician.
I am. There's my piano right there.
Wow. Yeah, jazz and classical.
Yep. In fact, I'm playing for New Year's Eve. I'm playing in a band on New Year's Eve. I joined a band for a couple of weeks playing congas and percussion and kind of getting back into that as a hobby.
Very
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Drum circle on New Year's Eve. It should be a lot of fun.
Well, since we're waiting for Chris, is there any chance you give us a little sample? Not to put you on the spot.
I'm not ready for that one yet.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
next
Okay.
time. Next time.
Well, you got to rehearse, don't you? You can rehearse with
Yeah, I got to
us.
rehearse. I'm not playing piano. I'm playing congas on New Year's Eve. Percussion's a lot easier to play because it's you don't have to worry about mistakes as much. Piano, you really got to be right on it. So.
Ever been to a drum circle?
Yeah, I've been to a couple of drum circles. Haven't got into it too much, but
those are a lot of fun.
They're a lot of
feel
fun.
like even when you can't play, you feel like you can play because you get caught up in the rhythm. Yeah.
Yep. So, hey, I have I think, is Richard still there?
Yeah,
he's off. Well, anyway, I'm thinking like I really need to study that documentary 7.
Who's
because
got the dog?
I think a lot.
Sorry, Raul.
I'm sorry.
We got to get rid of this dog.
I can shoot it right now.
Is that your dog?
Yeah, they'll calm down.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of information in 7 that we need to have at our fingertips. And maybe before Orlando, it would be nice to have like talking points or bulleted items that are really key. Because I really learned a lot from that, and I know I have to watch it a couple of more times, but those are important for the discussion whenever we talk to anybody that's going to stop at the booth, and be ready to bring out some of those key points. It seems to me that the strategy would be you'd have to present information to them that's really going to challenge their biases within 1 or 2 minutes. Otherwise, they're going to shut you off. They're not going to want to hear it. And there should be compelling arguments or information that catches their attention. For example, the one that got me, and I think Richard was the one that told me, was that there had never been a high-rise building that had collapsed under fire. And it was like, I did not know that. I know of a lot of high-rise fires, but I hadn't done enough research at the time to be able to make that statement. And so that's an example right there, to have maybe some bulleted points from that University of Alaska study to be ready to go. Because somebody like Glenn Corbett, those are the things that are really going to ring with him and not only say trap him, but hook him to have some sort of response. He can't just walk away from it, so and maybe I can do that. I'm going to watch it a couple of more times, and maybe I could make up like maybe 6 bullet points. Can't be too many, because a lot of the people or whoever shows up in Florida, i.e. you guys, are not fire service people, so we don't want to make it too technical, but the facts are the facts. And I think that the University of Alaska study made it simple enough for the layperson to understand what they were talking about. So,
Richard, what was the better way to phrase that? Fire protected steel frame buildings have never collapsed. How do you say that?
But yeah, fireproof steel frame.
type 1. You have to say type 1.
Yeah,
You have
type
to-
1 is fireproof by definition, and type 1 will mean a whole lot more to professionals. But fireproof covers it for I think most everybody else.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as fireproof. It's a term they used that kind of been carried over from the 1920s. You can still see some old buildings. There's one in Seattle. I have a picture of it. I don't know if they've painted over it, but it said fireproof. But firefighters know there's nothing fireproof. Everything burns or fails to fire. But type 1 is what they'll understand, and type 1 is fire resistant, fire resistive construction. There is no building term that says fireproof buildings. So we shouldn't say that. It's not a term that we use at all anymore.
You should be aware of the what is it, the Placo building in Iran? That do I have that right?
Glasgow.
What is it called?
Glasgow.
Yeah. Did we ever figure out what happened there, or whether it was not a fire resistant building, or the fact that it did collapse and there were fires? I don't have any research to look at to know what happened there.
That's where the discussion. AE 911 Truth did a detailed book on it. Booklet.
Oh,
And that's something we should all be aware of, since it did fail. There was evidence of thermite in the building. It
Okay.
did have fire. It did have it was steel frame. I don't know if it was fireproof. I don't remember.
And I
But
think
it's a great
that,
question given what we're talking.
and I think they're using the International Fire Code, Richard. I don't think there's any other fire code out there that I'm aware of that these buildings would be built under. I think it's just the International Fire Code. Oh, right, yeah. Glasgow. Where's that one at? I'm gonna have to read that. wasn't even the Plasco.
That's on the AE 911 Truth website. Can you
Okay.
send the link out to the chat? Gene?
There's so much to keep up on. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I was talking. Nobody heard me. Yes, I'll do that in the chat right now.
So the firefighters are putting out the fire. There's a bunch of them on a ladder with a hose. And the fire was under control when explosions started and blew them off the fire ladder. And the building came down. And then you see
Interesting.
molten metal in the rubble of the aftermath. So it has the telltale signs of a controlled demolition with thermal.
Yeah, just so you don't get tripped up, you may want to bone up on that one.
I appreciate that. That's a good point.
See, now when I was in the department, Seattle had a very thorough and aggressive fire prevention inspection program where we inspect every building once a year. It got to be that there's so many buildings now, we did it once every 2 years, and maybe they're now once every 3 years. But in that criteria for high-rise buildings, there it goes. We have to inspect all the common areas, which means the hallways, the lobbies. We always go up to the penthouse where the ventilation systems are, the fans, the motors, and the cables for the elevators. We go down into the basement where the sprinkler rooms are and the utilities. And we do this to every building. And in thinking back and even looking at all the criteria that we have to check for, I can't think of anything that would have the flammability of thermite or the flammability that would cause molten steel. There's just nothing there. And I've inspected these buildings for like 38 years, and I can't think of anything unless it's a specific occupancy that deals with those type of chemicals that your average type 1 high rise in any major city, i.e. like New York, could produce that amount of heat. And I don't know. The thing about New York is you have the subways under there and you have a lot of stuff underground, which I'm not familiar with, but your average city that isn't connected by underground subways or rail systems like that, I just cannot think of anything that can produce and generate those temperatures.
Willie Rodriguez said also that people were talking about explosions in the buildings and thought it was like gas or something in the kitchenettes up on the upper floors, but World Trade Center 1 and 2 were all electronic kitchens for that very reason. They didn't have any gas lines run up into the upper floors.
Good to know.
How-
I speak.
It would be interesting to know how many high-rise residents are gas. I'm gonna have to, that's an interesting thing too. I want to maybe check on that here in LA. I don't know how many are gas, how many are electric. So I'll have to talk to some of my LA friends and just inquire. So,
Raul, do you have any connection with Seattle anymore, or any people that you were
Oh, yeah.
close with? Yeah.
yeah, still quite a few, yeah.
And have you ever broached the subject with them, or I mean, where you worked with them?
Just with a couple of individuals, but nobody in the department yet. You know, I have to say that I'm still fairly new to coming on board with what you guys have been doing for the last 20 years, and it hasn't been as big of a priority, you know, to get to the bottom of this as it has for you people. And I admire your tenacity, which is one reason why I decided to at least cooperate, is so your efforts don't go unrewarded, and you're making sense, but it hasn't been a priority thing for me to go out and tell everybody I know. It hasn't become a crusade yet. I've been
Yet, that's the key word.
Well, I think Raul's in the perfect place right now because we know what it's hard for us after all this time to look back on what onboarded us, what got us, what clinched us. And he kind of alluded to it earlier. We need these small bits of information that impact people in a profound way. And you're in the frame of mind right now to do that.
But it wasn't so much this, it's the other things. And Al didn't want me to bring this up, but right, Al?
Yeah.
But I think it was the COVID response. I think the election. I think there's a lot of things that have been going on. Even the most recent one, whether you're a Trump fan or not, to take him off the ballot in Colorado. There's a lot of things going on here in our country where you have people in power that are manipulating information and circumstances. And whether you're a Trump fan or not, if people don't want them, then the people should vote them out. But to just take them off the ballot and take away that right for anybody to exercise, that's just one example of many of these things that are going on in our country where you're scratching your head and going, well, who's controlling the information? Where's this coming from? Who's making these decisions?
Not only Trump, but RFK Jr.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There's another one to balance the scales there. And so really that's been more of a catalyst for me to get involved because they're all connected. They're all connected. And I think, Al, you said that on the last meeting, is that they're all connected.
Well, you made a great segue into what I would recommend that you listen to coming up, and it's the called Genocide and the Empire Symposium, and it's put on by the International Center for 9/11 Justice in UK, and that's on January 7th. And they are going to be making the case that all of these things are connected, as far as I can tell, about what the conference, the symposium, it will be about. But I would recommend listening to that.
Yeah.
It's a worldview of what seems to be going on, not just in this country, but in all the wars going on, and who's promoting them, and why, and so I'm looking forward to seeing or hearing that again. January 7th. There should be a link that'll come out, or you can go to the International Center for 9/11 Justice in UK. So that's an aside. But the reason I brought up Seattle, Rule, is where we're focused on Papa and trying to get some idea of how to approach these firefighters, and for their own self-interest, that they're running a risk if in fact NIST is correct, and what is the best way to get through to these guys. And you're the guy that could help us with that, trying to figure that one out.
Well, I have to ponder on it. There has to be some. I'm trying to think what else I can write to get written and pose some of these questions.
But when you're talking to these guys, don't get into the 9/11 story unless it goes there. But trying to get them to understand that there's a problem, and that the NFPA is telling them one thing and NIST is telling them another, and would they be interested in learning more about it?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, if you had friends in the Seattle firehouse or wherever you worked, to try to get them interested, I think is what I'd love to find out how you did it.
Well, I'm going to, there are a couple of people that I can speak to, and they're getting close to retirement, which is actually good because there's less to risk. That's one thing Paul Cayley was his caution is he's so close to retirement, he doesn't want to expose himself too much to jeopardize anything before he's out. I know he's going to feel much more at ease and freer to speak once he's retired. He's got less than a year, but he's real concerned and cautious about being vocal at this time. So, but he's willing to participate. I mean, he did the documentary. I
Right.
think he changed his name, isn't it Simon? He went by Simon.
David
I think-
Schlesinger wanted to speak with you.
What's that?
David
you.
Schlesinger put in the chat that he wanted to address you.
I can't, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so honored to have you here. I was so excited when I heard what was happening with the firefighters. This to me is the most significant organizing happening in our movement. Not that there aren't some other valuable things, but this is what I respect the most. And I really loved it when you said you wanted to have 6 concise points to lead with at the next convention. And I'm not saying that the points I have are worthy of that, but I think in the same terms. I may have gone to MIT, but I'm terrible technically, and I just want to understand things in a simple term as possible so that the average person can understand it. So if it's possible, if somebody give me your email, I have a very short blog spot which lists a bunch of, it's 30 points, but the first 8 is all you have to care about. And that would, you may come up with something out of that.
Yeah, Susan and Jean have my email for
Right.
sure.
Great. Thank
So,
you.
Do you want to ask anything right now though?
Well, what do you say about my favorite one? I want, okay. The top of a building cannot crush the bottom of a building without slowing down. How
I
do you
agree
like
with
that?
No, I agree.
Yeah. That's
you-
real simple.
It's real simple because that's what columns do. And any building is always resisting the forces of gravity, and the columns are the strongest ones, and they support all the weight. So that's what makes building 7 so suspicious, is that there's no resistance at all. Columns that are unaffected, that eventually when the weight comes to that point, there should be some form of resistance.
Yeah.
And if you hold up any weight, 5 or 10 pound weight over your head, or even rest it on your elbow, your arm, your shaft here is a vertical column and can withstand a tremendous amount of weight. If you hold that same weight out laterally in a horizontal position, you can't hold on to it. So the strongest position is going to be that vertical column.
That's great.
Support any weight, right?
Wonderful. That's wonderfully simple. That's wonderful.
Yes, it's simple. You can do it with just a hand weight. You can hold this all day long, but you can't hold it like that. You'll fatigue. So there has to be some resistance when that weight is coming down, or the way you stated it, as the forces come down, you're going to have resistant forces simply because there's columns there.
I want to ask permission. I was leafleting at the American Civil Engineers Convention in New York City. I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. And I had a great interaction with 2 very young women who wanted to be civil engineers. They said, let's say that plane hits the towers and it mangles parts of 5 floors, rather than all 5 floors disappear, which of course couldn't happen. Pretend that all 5 floors disappeared. Okay. And they say, yes. And I say, if the floors above are going to begin to fall, they'll pick up momentum, but they won't, not very much, because they're going to hit the other floors pretty quickly. And they're going to destroy many of those floors. but they're not going to destroy all the floors all the way to the ground.
Mm.
And I said, do you agree? And they said, yes. And I said, none of the people in there my age will agree.
Mhm.
Chris Gioia just joined us.
Hey, he made it, Chris.
You must be on mute.
Yeah, it usually takes a while for the sound to come through.
I'm hearing something.
Chris,
Hey,
you're
Chris. I'm in the doctor's office, so there's music here. It's country music.
So one thing, Raul,
Yes, yes, sir.
that I often heard in the beginning about Building 7 was the diesel storage, and how people would just automatically said, "Oh well, they had lots of diesel storage there," and that compromised the buildings when they caught on fire. I don't know whatever happened to that story, but it certainly never made any sense. So
Well, and diesel needs to be preheated too. Diesel is
right,
not as volatile as gasoline is. Um, if you have a diesel, at least the old ones, I don't know what the new diesel engines are now for automobiles, but you used to have those glow plugs. You would turn the
yes,
key on and the glow plug would light up, the light would light up, and it's heating the oil. And then when it reached the temperature where a spark would be able to ignite it, then you could start it. But you had to let it heat up. And without being a chemist or anything like that, again, looking at that amount of diesel, and then you have the collapse of building 1 and 2, how much fire was there at ground level to be able to not only take out the tank and rupture it so that the fuel was exposed, but to be able to ignite the fuel. So it doesn't quite make sense. And you're also assuming that there's a tremendous amount of heat that's being released in 1 and 2 when they fall, and it spreads laterally, right? Yet there were plenty of people that survived the collapse. They're all dust. They're just covered in dust, but none of them are burned, right? The firefighters, we've seen pictures of all the people there that are covered in dust. And
right.
even looking at the video footage of 1 and 2 collapsing, you have to have the right balance of oxygen. There's so much dust and debris coming down in that giant mushroom. There's really no flame when you see it hit the lower floors. When you see the big clouds that travel like a tsunami through the roads, they're dust clouds. They're not fire clouds. Everything was covered in dust. Not everything was burned. And so building 7, which is behind building 5 and 6, to say that there was enough heat and fire to ignite a big giant, 2,000-gallon container of diesel fuel. I mean, you have to be able to scientifically prove that. Doesn't make sense, right?
Good answer, but that's a common debunker criticism that you'll get from people that don't know anything about what happened. It seems to me anyway. That's why I brought it up.
Okay, well then I'd have to go and research. I don't have it right in front of me right now, but let's find the ignition temperature of diesel, right? And you
Right.
just do it with that. The ignition temperature of diesel is whatever it is. And you're going to tell me that there was that much fire that was able to pass building 5 and 6 and ignite that diesel fuel without burning anybody else or any vehicles around. You could see the video footage around 7, and it doesn't look like all those vehicles were burned per se. I'd have to go back and look, but Yeah, who does all this? They're so fast.
Oh, that must be Gene.
That's Gene. What is it, Gene?
Gene, the marketing machine.
Gene, okay.
He's got everything at his fingertips.
Okay, so the flash point is like what, 128 degrees to what was it, Gene?
Let's see here. 126 to 205.
Okay, 205. So yeah, you'd have to at least have those temperatures going into that dust cloud, because they're saying that it was the lateral forces, the lateral energy from 1 and 2 that caused this building to ignite. Okay, well, that lateral force has to bypass 2 buildings and ignite diesel fuel. Now, 5 and 6 did burn. Building 5, if I remember correctly, I mean, that was a shell. I was there, saw it. It was still smoldering when I got there. So obviously there was enough fire there. I don't know what was the cause of 5 and 6, but it's still a reach, because those buildings did not collapse for it to reach building 7 with temperatures of, over 120 degrees. So
For those that don't know, everybody should know. 1, 2, and 7, and then you got 6, 5, and 4. And the Marriott was World Trade Center 3.
right. So where's 5 and 6 on that, Gene?
This is 6, and this is 5. 6 was really right under the shadow of World Trade Center 1. It was right next to it, literally a staircase away.
Okay.
This is the project you're working on for interactive and for the whole WTC complex, right?
Yep.
Great job.
See,
Well,
that's
this was the easy
incredible.
part.
Well,
can
still,
walk
that's
through it and everything.
and do we know where that diesel tank was on building 7? So they say.
I will find out. It was on the middle floors, I believe.
But still, that's a lot of resistance for the energy to get past those buildings, I would think.
Miles had his hand up, but he's lowered it. Miles, did you have a question?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Angulo. My name's Miles.
Hi, Miles.
I'm up in Alberta, Canada, and your document, Engine Company Fireground Operations,
Yes.
available on Amazon. Explain to me that's a training document, and would it be based on NFPA Code 1710 standard for the organization and deployment of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations, and special operations to the public by career fire departments? Does your document build on that NFPA standard that I just cited?
It would comply with the majority of it. Like I stated earlier, every standard is a recommendation. And for it to become law or enforceable, or even to be adopted as a policy for a fire department, they have to officially adopt that from the department and the city council.
Right. And from Code Finder on NFPA, it says Alberta Municipal Affairs. It is cited, referenced in the National Building Code of Canada. That's my understanding. So,
right.
That NFPA 1710 is part of law here in Canada, in my jurisdiction. Now, the people who
to finish answering that, then so my book would comply with the majority of it, because each chapter, when I submit it to the publishers, goes out to a group of people for NFPA review. In other words, they have to vote and say, yeah, this is good, or that's not right, or whatever. So this book did go through an NFPA review, which gives it their stamp of approval. But I'm also not writing I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm updating a third edition, which first, second, and third edition had already been through NFPA review. So if anything, it's fine tuning or modifying the advancements of best practices for firefighting. So I would say that. And so what my book is, it's a training book, textbook, specifically designed for the target audience of senior firefighters and company officers, the officers that are actually riding the fire trucks and the fire engines. It's not a command book because that gets into more areas. So it wouldn't comply with the command NFPA, which I forget what that one is. But for company officer operations, it's about as spot on as you can get.
And what kind of cooperation or what sort of feedback are you getting from the people from the NFPA who review your document? You're being left hanging? Is that what I'm to understand?
I didn't get any contact personally from anybody from the NFPA, but it all passed review when it went to publication. I had to address, they would send it back to me with their comments. I either accepted their recommendations and changed wording, or I stood my ground and said, well, this is how it actually is. But it would have had to have passed muster, so to say, before it went to press. So, but the feedback that I've gotten back on the book has been excellent.
But it says that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it maintains that firefighters will continue to advance in the building up towards underneath the fire floor and fight the fire within the building. And you're now questioning that as being safe or not, and you need some answers, correct?
No, I'm saying that we still do it that way. I think
you still do it that way.
Yeah, we still do it that way. And that is the way. And that's the way the current NFPA 1700 is stating that we go into the building and fight it. We start from either the floor below or 2 floors below the fire. That's where the whole issue comes in, is that the only reason this is an anomaly or even an issue is because NIST was the one who brought up this spontaneous collapse from fire. It just doesn't happen like that. So therein lies, I'm just going to say it's a lie that needs to be confronted. It's not that I no longer agree with it. I don't believe them at all. And these people that are making these judgment calls would never make that call. We wouldn't let them make any calls on a fire. And the University of Alaska report refutes all that. So I think we have some pretty hard evidence from my experience as a career firefighter and the professor at the University of Alaska, just to basically call bullshit on the NIST narrative on it. And I don't believe it. They're lying to us.
But we still have to advance it to your peer reviewers, correct? They're not aware of Dr. Halsey's analysis, and you really we have to, not you, but the public, the world that knows, needs to bring in these people who are your peer reviewers and get them involved.
In my next book, which hopefully will be published next year in 2024, I'm going to talk more about that. Not so much about, well, no, I am. I'm going to bring up Building 7. I'm going to mention the fact that no high-rise building has collapsed in North America because of fire, and that our strategy and tactics specifically for search and rescue and for protecting people in high-rise buildings is going to remain the same, despite that there's been calls from this that these buildings will collapse. I mean, I'm going to frame it now. At first, I was a little hesitant to do that. I had this discussion with Richard a while back. I'm going to hit it pretty strong on this next book. So, yeah.
You almost have to get indemnity because you're saying, well, go forth and continue to fight fires in the normal way,
No, I don't.
long-standing way.
I
But-
won't have to. I'm gonna agree with NFPA 1700. I don't have to be indemnified. I'm gonna say our current practices are the way we should do it.
Yeah, I guess you're correct. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the one who
It's
has to really answer for this is NIST,
yes,
not me. So,
excellent. Well, whatever we can do to help.
okay. I hope that answers your question.
Who witness actually came out and said that it was unsafe? Did they have any firefighting credentials, or I'm just curious?
Is Richard online, Richard? Or maybe
He's
Chris?
on.
Is Chris there? Chris, you there?
Chris is here. He keeps dropping out though.
Oh, okay.
You're muted, Chris.
I guess he's having technical difficulties.
That spokesman for NIST who was in the video, I don't know his name.
Gross, not gross. Huh?
I am
Not a-
Thunder?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No, he's the one that was speaking on the Bravo 7 video. He was the spokesman for NIST. He's the only official that I've heard talk about the spontaneous collapse. He says, we believe that this was caused by, and then he uses the term, spontaneous phenomenon collapse. I have to get the right wordage, but due to fire. And where did they come up with that term? It's not even listed in NFPA. So really we just have to go after NFPA to reject that type of language. We don't even have to, we don't really even have to get NFPA to go back and verify any information about Building 7, because they're not going to want to go there. They're not going to want to go there. But we could certainly say this was a term that NIST used, and I have to get the right word. It was spontaneous collapse, thermal collapse due to the fires. That in essence is what it's saying. And it's just not true. And we reject that wording. Even if we got NFPA to say that would be huge. They don't even have to address Building 7. They just have to reject that term. If they reject that term, then they would be rejecting the Building 7 report in essence.
Great. Now, Chris,
Right.
Gioia, I think spoke up a moment ago. Can we hear you, Chris?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining us.
Hey,
Thank you
Chris.
for having me.
Did
Yeah,
you want
how's
to
it-
chime in on this?
Actually, I'm just listening.
Oh, all right. It's an honor having you join us.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm glad I'm not alone. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
All right, you're welcome. I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm on my phone. I couldn't get my computer to work, but I'm gonna keep trying.
But I can hear you very well on the phone anyway.
We
Okay.
are recording it, so I can send this out to you if I have your correct email. Yeah,
Okay.
terrific. I have my hand up. So I have a question. We've been focusing very much on the event of the day of 9/11 and the collapse and the fires of that day. But what about the persistent fires that went on for at least a couple of months? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I was just texting someone to get the terminology from this. Can you repeat the question, Susan? I'm sorry.
We've been
Is
focusing,
it for me?
yes,
The question's to me?
yes, or
Okay.
Chris, a firefighter,
Okay.
someone who's an expert on fires. We've been focusing on the fires and the events of the day and the collapse, etc. But beyond that day, what about the persistent fires that went on for a couple of months afterwards? You know, the ground being so hot that the firefighters couldn't even walk on it. What would cause all that persistent extreme?
That was what I was addressing earlier today, is that of course, in Seattle, we don't have the underground system as extensive as New York does, but I cannot think of what would generate those type of temperatures. The fuel load in high-rise buildings below the lobby level, just I don't think they would generate that amount of heat. That's the foundation. I mean, most of it is concrete and steel. And outside of the normal utilities, I don't know what type of fuel load you would have to generate those type of temperatures. And I don't think anyone's really given it great thought.
But Raul,
Yes.
Raul, I think what Susan's asking is not so much the temperatures, but the fact that the fires lasted 3 months.
Yeah.
They lasted like a full 13 weeks. And the question is, what kind of fire can last that long?
The persistent
Regardless of temperature.
Right. I agree with you. And that's what I'm saying. I just don't know. Like, whenever you have a fire, I always try and go to a bonfire, because everyone has been to a bonfire, a camping fire, right? You have all these logs. They're either assembled in a teepee or in squares, however you build your fire. You have your big fire, the fuel burns down, the wood collapses, and then you have the ash, right? And it starts to cool down. But as you stir it up, you're going to get the embers, and that's why they tell you to make sure your campfire is out, dead out, because when you uncover it, you're going to introduce oxygen, and once you have oxygen to that heat source, you're going to reignite the fire. But there has to be fuel. There has to be wood there. If there's no more wood, even if you have heat and oxygen, there's nothing left to burn. So the temperature will drop, and then it finally goes out. But it's that uncovering that causes that fire to reignite. When you stir up your fireplace or a bonfire with a poker and you stir it up, you'll get some more fire. Not a lot, not to the intensity that you had when you had nice full logs to burn, but you're going to have some combustion going on. And so it was just assumed that as they're digging through the pile at World Trade Center, that they're uncovering these pockets of heat. Oxygen is being introduced, and there's still fuel to burn, and that's why you have those fires going on for 3 months. But then you would have to speculate, okay, well, how efficient are those pockets to retain the heat for that long? What can generate those high temperatures to basically stay energized for 3 months? What's causing those temperatures? I can't think of anything that would generate those numbers. So, Chris, can you?
How's my audio? Am I still there?
Good. Yeah,
Yes,
your audio is
you
good.
are. Good.
I seem to recall that thermite will burn underwater. They flooded the bathtub with water, so they should have put out any fires should have been extinguished, and the presence of thermite would explain possibly why the fires wouldn't go out and would keep burning, because even if you submerge it underwater, it's still going to burn. So that's my take on that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. The thermite is not, from what I understand, I haven't done a lot of research on thermite. It's a military grade component, but in your average building inspection, Chris, in inspecting buildings, we're going to do the lobby, we're going to check the fire alarm panels, we're going to go down into the basement, we're going to check the sprinkler systems, the piping, there's underground garages. There's no thermite isn't a component of high-rise structural fire or high-rise building construction. We don't
No.
use thermite to build high-rise buildings. So why would it be there? It wouldn't normally be there. That's what I'm saying, is that there has to be something that is unusual. There has to be some fuel source that is uncommon to be able to sustain those temperatures for 3 months. In your average building, that's just not going to happen.
No.
There's nothing
No
down there.
thermite was there. Whether it should be there or not, we know it was.
No, right. I understand that. I understand it, but you're getting them. No one wants to explain that, right?
Right.
That they don't want to answer that question.
Doesn't quite answer the question because
The way to phrase the question to me would be, the way to phrase the question to me is, you tell me, under normal building construction for high-rise buildings, what material is going to generate that amount of heat? What type of building components and fuel load are going to generate those temperatures and be able to withstand them for 3 months? That's the way to ask.
Right.
That's the way to ask the question. Don't even bring up thermite, because that's thermite. You're one of those people. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah,
But thermite, from what I understand, doesn't persist for 3 months.
No.
So that's still a question, even amongst ourselves.
Oh, wait, the molten metal will definitely stay molten if concentrated in a lower area together. And we should be particular on our terms here. Thermite is not really what we're talking about. We're talking about nanothermite, which is military grade. Regular thermite's not military. It's used every day in railroad tracks and whatnot. But
Yeah.
Okay, is it used in steel construction, Gene?
no, it's definitely added. Stephen Jones's paper and Niels Harrod's paper prove that it was in the dust. The question is, why was it there? But I can see liquid molten metal is going to find the lowest path, where you have Chief Ravulo saying in that famous clip we all know, it flowed like lava down the channel rails.
Right, but how persistent is it? How
I mean, if you have,
does thermite, once it's ignited, nanothermite, how long does nanothermite persist once it's
yes,
ignited? That's the question.
but like Raul said, once you lift certain things off of a fire, it can let the air. Well, not that nanothermite needs air, but there were a couple clips of eyewitnesses that said once they pulled up some of the steel, it would start a new fire. And you have a concentration of liquid molten materials together, I imagine it would persist quite a long time. I know what you're getting at, and I
Well,
want to be
I'm
fair.
not getting at anything. I'm just asking a question because I still have never gotten an answer on the persistency of nanothermite.
I would think the quantity of molten materials together in a low area that's completely covered up with materials would retain heat for a
3
long
months.
amount of time.
I'd like to get that definitively explained from someone who understands the use of nanothermite.
How about the stuff in barometric bombs? Because I know Barton used to push the idea that every floor in the 1 and 2 had a barometric bomb, which facilitated the building coming down quickly. And it's a gas that spreads out, but it has there's a powder in it, or there's a solid in it that spreads out. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think one thing I'm going to try and do is I need to contact Captain Ruvlo. I actually met him once. I was a guest of the FDNY, one of the chiefs there, and they had me ride with Rescue 2. He was the captain of Rescue 2. And I think he was still the captain of Rescue 2 at that time, September 11th, because I rode with him that year in June of 2001. So my guess is he's retired now, but I do know people that could probably get in touch with him. and he'd be a real guy to elaborate on that if he was willing to speak. I'm going to try and track him down, because Ruvolo, he was a very no-nonsense captain, and yeah, I met him, and now you got me curious on. I saw the video clip of him explaining that, but he would be a key person to talk to again after this.
Very good.
You
Well,
guys are so good.
love to
Yeah,
have him.
that's Captain Ruvolo right
guest
there.
speaker. We would love to have him as a guest speaker. If you can put him in touch with me.
I'd have to track him down and see if he's willing to talk.
Awesome.
Again, you got to remember, a lot of this stuff is still real visceral with these guys.
Right,
You know,
right.
it's easy for us to talk about it because we haven't lost anybody, and nobody wants to believe that their government is complacent in allowing this to happen.
Complicit.
Well, we have questions. We still have questions.
Yeah.
Miles has his hand up.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a article in a periodical called Daily Commercial News by Construction Connect Canada. Construction Connect. This publication is one of Canada's most comprehensive listings of projects for people to put bids on projects for construction. And there was a May 2020 article titled World Trade Center 7 building did not collapse due to fire, says report. And it goes on, it says, let me quote Robert Carroll, Korol, a fellow of the Canadian Society of Civil Engineering. He said, the report notes that the outside frame of, this would be building 7, was more flexible than the inside frame, which is where the elevator shafts were, says McMaster University Professor Emeritus of Civil Engineering Robert Carroll, a fellow of Canadian Society of Civil Engineering, who is one of 2 peers who reviewed the University of Alaska Fairbanks study. Quote, he goes on to say, under the conditions described, the displacement of the outside steel would have been only 1 inch, not the 6.25 inches NIST claimed, and not enough to cause failure, unquote. Further, he says the debris from World Trade Center 1 did not attain sufficient mass to cause structural damage to the steel in the building. The bottom line, he says, is that the NIST report is flawed and of no value to future engineering or architectural learning. So therefore, it seems here in Canada, we've just said NIST is wrong. This is a widely circulated document, publication. So it tells me here in Canada, we're just saying NIST is wrong. Carry on fighting fires as normal because NIST is wrong. I could send this article to you if I can get your email.
Please
offline.
do. Yeah, Susan has that, and I think that's a good term. I like the way he said that. That you know what, the NIST report serves no value. That should start becoming part of our nomenclature, or especially firefighters, because that to me is a very strong way, without saying they're liars or they're full of crap. It has no value at all. It has no value.
And you're being able to cite this article might be, a good position or good source of backup for you to talk to people. And you can say, well, on that side of the north of the border, this is their opinion, and they're going on with life as normal. The sad thing about it, though, of course, I was listening to Professor Jeffrey Sachs' recent interview with Chris Hedges on YouTube titled U.S. Foreign Policy is a Corrupt Scam. This is Professor Sachs saying this. And the Watson Institute of Brown University in the United States says that the cost of war since 9/11 has been 8 trillion with the T US dollars. So that's the bigger
Miles, can you put the
tragedy.
link? Miles, can you put the link to that article in the chat, please?
Will do. Yeah, thank
Alright.
you.
I'm so impressed with all the information you guys have at your fingertips. So it's totally amazing. So I'm gonna commit to tracking down Captain Ruvalo and see where he's at on this. I do think that after 20 years, a lot of that pain has gone away and people are asking more questions. But I also think, just in light of everything that's going on, whether you talk about the COVID, the elections, the war in Ukraine, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, people are seeing that there's a lot of things here happening very quickly, and the people in charge of information are not being straight up. There's a lot of people waking up and asking more and more questions. And so I think the time is right, not so much to answer the questions from September 11th, but that they're more willing now to realize, there's a lot of stuff going on here that what didn't come to light, or they didn't tell us, we're being duped. And I think it's easier because of other events for us to accept these questions that we have from September 11th. That's what happened to me. It's not so much that I was convinced on September 11th, is that there were other issues happening that forced me to ask the question, hey, well, what else is going on? So they're connected. Everything is connected here.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, we mentioned Bill Manning. Is he around still?
He is, and he spoke to you, right, Richard? Is Richard on? I could try and reach out to Bill again. He does.
Yeah, I heard my name.
Yeah, Richard. Did Bill Manning talk to you that time? I put him in touch with you, right? Was it
Man, I talked to him for hours.
you did or did not? I didn't hear you.
Did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you think
In the end, he wimped out.
in the end? Why? I mean, what did you get from all that?
I got that he had courage and it comes and goes with him, and that he's not going to take a stand. He's not going to be interviewed.
But it's
But
not that he doesn't
took
believe it.
hours and hours. Oh, he knows it was a problem. He knows. I think he knows it was pretty sure he knows it was an inside job. It's been a year since I talked to him, almost. So I was just really disappointed. I mean, you and I both worked him hard, and he was ready. And then after a long absence, he called me back and apologized. I don't know. I think he's still got a drinking problem.
Okay, well, I can reach out to him again and see. Well, the reason why it's important to talk to him, because we bring up his article, Gene brought up his article, and that was back in early 2001. But
Well, all I was asking him to do was to read it, which is kind of what you did for us.
Yeah,
And he couldn't even do
I
that.
did do that. I did.
You
do
did that. Yeah, you did that.
So for me, I think the next step is to try and track down Captain Ruvalo and see if I could find out where he stands on a lot of this. You don't know him, Chris, do you? Do you know Captain Ruvalo from Rescue 2?
You're muted, Chris.
Well, I have friends in FDNY that would be able to track him down, even if he's retired. So.
Cool.
So
Okay, so those are my two big to-do lists. Track down Captain Ruvalo and come up with some sort of easy to understand bullet list from the University of Alaska report. So
Raul, what you were saying about people becoming more aware. Also, the mainstream media's brainwashing or whatever the hell they're doing is getting much more sophisticated now.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I know. But you know what? The truth is always the truth. The truth is the truth. So that's all we can do, right?
That's right.
Right, but we might have to deal with educating people about the media because they listen to it and they believe that the moon was made out of green cheese, cream, whatever, and it's very hard to convince them that what they just saw on TV is not the truth.
It's a slow process. I mean, it took like almost 20 years for me to come around, and I've spoken to Richard Gage more than I ever wanted to. I didn't want to. I didn't want to get involved with Richard at all in the beginning, and now we've become friends, and I've, I've much more. I listen to him very carefully now, and so it's taken a long process, you know. And I think what it is for me is that I refuse to believe that it was an inside job and that our government would be willing to sacrifice 343 firemen lives for an objective. And now I totally believe that. And I don't know where this is going to end. You know, I don't know what the end game is for this organization here. I think it's mainly that we're people, and the reason why I'm choosing just to be involved to the capacity that I'm in is that I'm going to stand up for the truth and say it to whoever's going to listen. And that's it. Because I don't know how much I can really accomplish. I don't know how much I can actually change other than just keep telling the truth in a sense from, you know, challenges the expertise of our business. If we're talking about firefighting, then there's a standard, there's an expertise, and you have to be able to ask and answer certain questions a certain way. And so as long as I keep plugging forward on that from that perspective, I can gain ground. But other than just saying the NIST report has no value, I don't know what else we're going to get. It's not like anyone's going to admit. It's not like anyone's going to admit fault. Yep, you're right. You caught us. It was us. We're never going to get that.
Well, just like with the JFK assassination, we never got any justice on that. But you know, but what we can do, we're up against some very powerful forces, but we have to remember they're powerful only because the public allows them to be powerful.
Right.
And you know, the more of us who chip at that wall, eventually that wall is going to collapse. So,
Yeah.
you know, just keep speaking the truth. You don't know how many people you're reaching, how many you're affecting, but each one of those people you reach and affect are going to reach some more, and they're all chipping at that wall, and it's going to come down eventually if we keep at it.
I was really impressed with Alex Jones. He was interviewed by Tucker Carlson a couple of weeks ago. I think we spoke about that on the last meeting. And what I found that was really actually inspirational, because I didn't know what to think of him before. I've heard him speak a lot of times, and I agreed with him. There were other things that I thought he was pretty crazy on, but his courage in addressing these issues, even to the point of willing to be arrested. I mean, that to me was, that guy really believes in what he's saying in order to even be arrested. But in his talk with Tucker, he said something very interesting. He said, you know what, I'm meeting more and more people now that are more sophisticated, more educated than I am. And I did my part. And I'm looking forward to becoming less and less relevant. I'm going to be irrelevant. There'll be other people to carry it forward. And he was willing to step back and feels like he really did his part in just sharing the truth. And InfoWars, right? That's his program, information. He shared the information, and he realizes now that more people are awake more than ever, and there's other people that are running the torch. And if he gets surpassed by somebody more influential, he's okay with that. And he'd like to just kind of fade into the sunset. But what did he accomplish? All he did was just keep telling the truth, telling the truth, telling the truth. And I think that's all we can do. That's all we can do.
I wouldn't trust him too much. I think he's a double agent.
He may be, but his strategy is just to tell the truth. And it's all part of the puzzle. I mean, look, I'm speaking to all of you people. I don't know any of you people, but what we're talking about resonates with me, and I feel compelled to do my part. That's all I can do.
I think the question, at least for me, you have to ask is how do you live with yourself going forward, knowing the truth? And for me, that I can't look at it any other way.
Right.
This introduces our next meeting with Marty Harper and Fran Shore about the psychology of 9/11. This group has a list of over 200, almost 300 people, and we used to have great participation. And a lot, too many of us have gotten war weary or distracted by other issues and no longer participating in 9/11 truth. We just had a good handover. Some of you here might remember Mark McCurdick, and he was over my house, and he used to be very deeply involved in Boston 9/11 truth, and hasn't been for years now, or maybe 5 years now, 4 or 5 years. And we started talking about 9/11, and he says, look, I don't want to say I don't care, but I don't care anymore. It's like, whoa. He used to be one of the most involved in our group. So there's something psychological going on even with our own members. And I'd really like to get at the heart of that with these two speakers who are coming up on January 11th.
Well, it's very easy to get weary and feel like no one's listening. I was talking to Chris. I don't know if you can still hear me, Chris. And he was very vocal, and he's tired and he's done. But all of a sudden, I got interested. And it's like, wow, man, this guy's being really brave. I need to step up my game. And I contacted him, and now here he is again. So it takes a long time, but slowly but surely, key people are going to listen, and the lights are going to come on. And you helped do that for me, Chris.
Somebody's joining us late.
I could see him there. I think you're on mute, Chris, but your efforts were not.
How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Susan?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you, Raul. It definitely takes its toll. It's going to beat you up because it seems like at every turn you run into a wall, and it definitely it saps your strength. It takes a psychological toll.
Yeah.
But if you keep in mind that we all have to go on living no matter what happens, we all have to go on living, and we all just have to keep being the best people that we can possibly be. And that's it. We're not going to change. You're not going to change what happened. You're not going to expose exactly what happened, even though I think down the road, more and more people are finally coming to grips with a lot more happened than what has officially been said. So I would just say, you know what, at this point, like I told Raul, I'm so tired of everything that I'm just focusing on being the best person I possibly can be. And if I could help people out, I'm going to try and help people out still.
Chris, does that include coming to Orlando and making our collective presence known as professionals, particularly you and Raul, for 3 days?
When is this, Richard?
June, mid-June, Orlando, Florida National Fire Protection Association convention, where we have 3 1/2-day opportunities to reach thousands of firefighters and fire professionals and fire protection engineers together on at the event there. And we've done this twice in a row now, and it's created quite a stir there. We did collect 300 emails from folks who were interested because they saw Building 7 going down in front of our booth, which is very professional.
Oh,
And we got about the same number the next year. And we're creating dialogue. Eric Lawyer, firefighters for 9/11 Truth, was there. And we had Raul the first time in Boston, went the second time in Las Vegas. We brought in Dale Pierce, firefighter. And this next time, I think the third time I see as a breakthrough opportunity. And especially if we can get you guys in some manner of uniform to stand up for being a Seattle firefighter captain and a fire commissioner, fire chief, retired from the New York area town. I think they will begin to come to us and say, wow, we give up, you know. This is how we got on C-SPAN. I did a 45-minute presentation interview on C-SPAN's Washington Journal only after they were hassled continuously for a year by call-in orchestrated among the 89 Truth staff. So we feel like this is the grand opportunity to really pull it together. We're going to be organizing this on Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And it'd be great if we could sit down and talk to us, Jean and Sandra and Sue Serpa and Al Magdalena and I and Eric Lawyer will be there, and hopefully you both can make it so that we can get our sense of commitment. We've got a booth almost reserved. Jean will show you where it is, right opposite the bar, which was kind of the first our first year.
A good spot.
Great opportunity.
restrooms,
Great spot.
bar, NFPA
Hey,
pavilion.
why
we'll warm
wouldn't you
them up.
want to go to Orlando in June? Come on.
Gene, you did good.
Yeah, good job.
It was
Chris still works.
7:47. Booth 747. How good is that's a lucky number.
Oh,
Right,
oh
right
my
down the aisle,
goodness.
right down the aisle from the NFPA pavilion, right across from the bar and the restrooms. That is the spot.
That's a good spot.
Let's fly you down. You want to go to Orlando, don't you? June 17th. Come on.
I,
We've put it together almost $3,000 already.
Mhm.
And we got more in order to secure the booth and then more in order to raise funds. But I've got a friend who's going to house us all in his WorldMark timeshare for those 4 days. And then we got a day after to actually see anything we want to see in Orlando too.
this is Orlando, you said.
Yeah.
This could backfire. 2 drunk firefighters might not be so good. I don't know.
Yeah, he's talking about Eric.
Yeah, really.
I will keep the invitation open if I may. I appreciate the offer. I can't commit because I'm still working. I have less than 2 years to go before I officially retire from my construction job. And because of the nature of the business, Richard, you know that, it's tough to just take off, because when you take off, they just lay you off.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me.
Hey, I just got a text from Eric that term we were talking about that NIST used. It's called fire-induced progressive collapse.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to memorize that term. Fire-induced progressive collapse in steel frame buildings. And
That
just
is,
call it for what it is. It's total bullshit.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
Chris?
I agree with you 100%, Raul. For them to even come out and say that's a fire-induced progressive collapse, there's nothing progressive about that collapse.
Right,
whatsoever.
exactly. Yeah, there's nothing progressive about it. So, but that's
Quick
their
question, can anybody hear what I'm saying right now? Okay,
yes.
my mic wasn't working, so.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
can hear it.
Lawrence, is that you?
Yep.
Hello.
Hello from.
Anyway, that's
Chris.
the
Hi, Chris.
term. That's the term we need to use in our dialogue, in our nomenclature, whenever we're talking. That fire-induced progressive collapse in steel frame buildings is total bullshit. It's a nice, polite, scientific-ish term that NIST came up with to make it sound credible and scientific, but it's total crap, and
No, didn't
we have
they
to reject it.
didn't
It
they
serves
apply
no
that
value.
term to 1 and 2 also? Didn't
I
they
only
say that about?
I only saw that in reference to the report on Building 7, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't speak on 1 and 2, but I would imagine that they're going to use the same formula. Yeah. Have you heard it, Chris?
They never did an analysis of the final collapse of that building. They only did it up to the point.
Yeah.
Right, right. But I think they said that the cause, without getting into anything, I think they said that 1 and 2, obviously it was a progressive collapse because it collapsed from the top down.
Yeah, a lot of people called it a pancake collapse.
That's what we
Except,
call That's what we call those type of collapse. But see, the
Yeah.
1 and 2, the anomaly is the planes. And that's why we can hit hard on 7, is because there were no firefighter lives lost and there were no planes that hit that building. So where's the resistance in discussing thoroughly Building 7? That would be the case study of the century. If it was on any other date, that would be the case study of the century.
Richard has been saying that for 20 years now, that Building 7 is the key, and I agree with him. It is. You could get people's attention, I think, from all the commentary and from all the discussions that we've had with people. They're always saying they could believe what happened to 1 and 2, but they always tell me that Building 7 is is definitely questionable and sketchy.
Hey, I found the clip of Cheyenne, if I may share it real quick. This, I think everybody will enjoy this. It's about 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's him.
Absence
I
of
got to
water
get that
supply
guy's
to
name.
operate the sprinklers and burned beyond the ability of firefighters to control it.
Here it is.
Fell because thermal expansion, a phenomenon not considered in current building design practice, caused a fire-induced progressive collapse.
See, that's bullshit. That's bullshit in itself because they got the side plates on the trusses that are made specifically to keep the beams from walking off their seats.
Mhm.
But they eliminated that in their analysis.
Yep. And the amount of fire in the video is not nearly sufficient with office fire load to
No,
cause that type of structural steel failure. No way.
no, office contents fires, it can't explain it.
Mm-mm. And it was sprinkled. You can see the sprinklers operating. There's too many signs there that it's total bullshit. So.
A lot of disinformation, Raul.
Mhm. Well, I was more cautious a couple of years ago, but I'm not anymore. It's total crap. They're lying to us. I'm not gonna let them.
I'm glad to see you coming out of your shell.
I know. Well, it's because when you write a book, you're on the hook.
Yeah, you're a published author, and you command a lot of respect. So,
you're putting out information there that you're basically telling the guys, this is how we do it. This is how to do it. And so it has to be accurate and correct. I don't want to give them stuff that they're going to fear. I'm not going to tell them things that are going to get them killed. I want them to survive the event. And so I look to these organizations like NFA, USFA, NIST, UL, all the information that they put out. I'm trusting that. I'm weighing it. I weigh everything, but it needs to make sense to me. But I'm trusting that they're giving us accurate information. But this is a bold, in your face, flat out lie. So
it is absolutely, and they've been jamming this lie down our throats.
Not anymore. Never again.
Here's the water still. Here's the sprinklers running in 7 still. Here you can see the water gushing out of the sprinklers.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what else to say, but I do have some homework though, so I'm going to do.
The lights are going to shut off.
Bullet points. I'm going to do some bullet points on the 7 documentary, and try and contact Captain Rulo. That's what I'll commit to.
Thank you, both of you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
What else is left, Susan?
Roll.
Yes.
Along those lines about not taking it anymore, I want to throw this out to people because I've been thinking about it. And we've always, all of us, have been disparaged as truthers, where they turn being the truth into a negative connotation. And I'd like to push back moving forward everywhere with everybody, that anybody who says that to us, I would like to call them a collaborator to high treason against the United States and murder, and just throw it right back in their face for the people who call us truthers, that I would turn to them and call them collaborators, because that's exactly what they are.
Excellent. Right.
That is
right on,
excellent, Chris. And I know you're tired, Chris, but I hope you just got a little bit more in you to just hang in there with me.
I
think
do.
we got a few more cards to play.
Well, I'm running on nuclear power.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you. I'm from New York. I mean, I lived in New York on September 11th, and knew people, someone who was in the subway during the event with the Twin Towers, like under the Twin Towers. And it's so great to listen to you because, I mean, I have friends in New Yorkers who just they just clammed up, and they're not, they're the first people to like sort of call me conspiracy theorist. And it's very difficult to just be around, to have your life turned upside down living in New York City, and that's your home. And then, I mean, as you probably know already, but I thank you so much. I admire what you're doing. I just wanted to say that.
Is Rebecca? Rebecca was speaking?
Yes, that was Rebecca.
Okay. Yeah.
She's in Albany, New York right now.
Thank you, Rebecca. You
I
know
live in
what?
Albany now, yeah.
Not only on this subject, but on the other global subjects that we were talking about, I've lost a lot of friends because they think I'm a conspiracy guy now, but I've met a lot of new friends, and
Yes, it's true.
yeah, and the caliber of friendship is higher, and I'd rather be with those people that can honestly look at the truth and say, let's not check our brains out. Our gut feeling and what we know is right. I think it's God-given, it's by design, and we shouldn't just hand that over to people because they have some sort of title or position in the media or in government that somehow they're smarter than us or they know better than us. And it's just not true. So,
Yeah,
I've met a lot of new people, and I think I like those friends better.
That's very well put.
Raul,
Yeah.
in the chat, I put where the fuel tanks were located.
All right.
3 systems contain 2 12,000-gallon fuel tanks, 2 6,000 tanks beneath the building's loading docks, and a single 6,000 tank on the first floor.
Right.
In addition, one system used 275-gallon tank on the 5th floor, 275-gallon tank on the 8th floor, and a 50-gallon tank on the 9th floor.
Yeah, I'd like to just bring this up with Chris. Chris, I don't know if you heard me speak of this before. So some of the FDNY guys that I was talking to, about 7, they said that it was the collateral damage from 1 and 2 that took out the supports, i.e. specifically the diesel fuel tanks in building 7, right? Okay, so we looked up the ignition temperature of diesel. Like I said, diesel is not as flammable as gasoline. It needs to be preheated to ignite. And you're going to have this thermal blast, which is being absorbed by building 5 and 6 before it even hits building 7 with those temperatures to ignite that. And it just doesn't make sense. The other thing, and the reason why it doesn't make sense, is because you had a lot of firefighters and civilians who survived the collapse. If you look at all the video footage of this big giant dust cloud, it's all dust. They're covered with dust. They weren't burned.
No.
There's no that tsunami of dust cloud. That humongous dust cloud wasn't a fireball. The fireballs consumed pretty quickly as the 2 buildings mushroomed down. There's a lot of dust there, and I would imagine maybe even the oxygen level is below 19%, 15%. I mean, there's so much debris there. Can it really support any combustion at all? But
a lot of people describe those as pyroclastic clouds that were leaving the scene of the buildings, and WTC-7, even before the collapse, there were pyroclastic clouds rising from the bottom. Those really, rolling, billowing clouds of dust were caused by superheated or really hot air.
I don't
Not
remember
fire.
seeing people being burned though. You had a lot of people that were injured by debris. You have dust covered everything, including people, but they weren't suffering thermal dermal.
People did testify to it really being hot. It's not hot enough to burn people. That dust was heated, but not the source of the heat.
Well, what
Right.
about the testimony?
But to ignite diesel fuel though?
No,
that's what I'm saying. If it's hot enough to ignite the diesel fuel, then there should be a lot more burn victims.
Well,
But there were burn victims. The No Day brothers talked about people coming off the elevators with their skin falling off.
because they were close to, that's building 1 and 2. See, that's
Right.
why we have to keep
That
it to
was
7.
that was before the first plane struck, Raul.
Right, but I'm trying to, you're gonna get sidetracked with 1 and 2. Don't talk about that. Talk about 7.
Yeah.
You gotta stick with 7.
Yeah.
7 is the key.
Roll the diesel tanks were underground underneath concrete slabs, and after they cleared the debris away, they pumped out the diesel and reclaimed it.
What?
Whoa.
Wow.
That's new information.
Yeah, I haven't heard that either, Chris.
Wait,
Okay,
say again?
and
A lot of people are thinking that is the source of the fire.
that is why NIST turned around and had to disregard that theory, because the diesel fuel didn't ignite and it was pumped out. And that information comes from David Cole.
Wow.
He's
Yeah, it was
reputable.
pumped out, but and it didn't ignite. But I think it was on the same floors, was it not, as the generators, which was floor 5.
I don't know, Richard.
I don't know either, but you still have to come up with,
and it doesn't.
you still have to come up with an ignition source, which they're saying came from building 1 and 2, right?
Right.
That ignition source, that blast would have to go past building 5 and 6. You got a huge ass building in front of building 7. That's going to absorb the lateral heat. And it did start fires in those buildings, but was that sufficient enough to also ignite 7? And if so,
Well,
then I think you would have a lot more burn victims, I would think.
Yes,
Harry
no,
Jennings.
even NIST is saying that the diesel fuel did not ignite. So
Right.
I don't know
They
why we have
discounted
to
it.
figure that out.
They had to come up with a more plausible BS story.
Has
Yeah.
anyone actually done any research into people being aware of Building 7, the plans to actually demolish Building 7 in a controlled demolition before Building 7 came down? Because it was like, this is of course like extemporaneous, word on the street, but I mean, I got a phone call from the person I was engaged to at the time, the afternoon of September 11th, in which he had talked to the person we knew who was on the subway, trapped on the subway, before the buildings 1 and 2 came down, and he was evacuated out into the street and basically witnessed like the first collapse. But he also heard from someone on the street that Building 7 would be demolished, and this was something that people were, I mean, I guess this couldn't be used as hard evidence, but this was something that people who were in Lower Manhattan, this was something common to people, that people heard that Building 7 would be brought down because it was damaged, was what people were repeating on the day of September 11th.
See, here's a question I would ask Chris, being a firefighter and a chief. If you're running a fire, Chris, and you're not going to have lay people come up to you as the incident commander of that building and say, hey, this building's coming down. Who is this person? Who's giving me this information? How do they know? How can they just make a judgment call that in 5 hours this building's going to come down? We wouldn't listen to people like that on the street.
That makes sense. Yeah.
They'd have to have a vest on that said, structural engineer or something like that. They'd have to be identified as a expert and somebody that perhaps you requested, please send me a building engineer. Okay, I'm the building engineer. Hello. What do you think is going to go on here? I mean, you know what I'm saying, Chris? It's just,
Yeah,
we just
I
don't take,
wouldn't entertain it.
we wouldn't, exactly. You wouldn't entertain that information from a civilian or from
No.
somebody you didn't recognize as an authority, or by somebody that you didn't request, and you wouldn't take that and go, oh, well, I guess we'll pack up and go home. You wouldn't do that.
They'd have to be invited to the party.
I was just
Exactly.
wondering if that was something that there was any information related to it, or, you know, that anyone had heard, but yeah, that makes sense, of course.
If they had plans to demolish 7 like before September 11th, like that was a remodel plan, I wouldn't know about that. But on the day of the event, for them to say, well, this building's coming down, that we just don't hear that talk. You didn't hear it at the First Interstate. The only time was One Meridian Plaza. That was 12 stories, and they thought perhaps that building would come down. But it was the fire officials that determined that with the structural engineers in Philadelphia. It wasn't just people coming up to the chief and saying, hey, you know, that building's going to come down. I'd get out if I were you. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Hey, Raul, what if I could tell you that somebody had the building plans for World Trade Center 7 in April of 2000? The new plan.
I had heard that from the who's the owner, Silverstein?
Yeah, there's a 20-second clip if anybody wants to see it real quick.
All right, but Lou also has his hand raised, so we have to give him a shot.
All right, real quick.
And so, next thing you know, we've got the designs of a building. And the first design meeting
Building 7
was in April of 2000. And construction began shortly thereafter in 2002.
So why would he have plans for something that hadn't been demolished yet?
Right. I saw that clip before, and that's what I'm saying, that raises a red flag and is very suspicious. But if you're talking from an incident standpoint, meaning something has happened to this building on this date and the fire department is there to mitigate the emergency, that is not information that we would just receive from anybody or have any civilian. When I say civilian, I'm meaning somebody who isn't identified as an authority come up and warn people, hey, this building's coming down. This building's coming down. That just doesn't happen at fire scenes. And we would not take that as credible information. I think Chris would agree.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Right, that makes sense.
Look at the captain of the Titanic after he hit the iceberg, right? He called the chief engineer of the ship to bring the plans in, and the engineer showed the captain and explained to him about the bulkheads flooding and showed it to him. So somebody would have to come to the scene with building plans and point out exactly where they thought the damage was and why the building was going to come down. And then there would be a small conference amongst the other incident commanders and the chiefs as to the course of action. And that person who brought that up, they're not just walking away after saying that.
Yeah.
They're not headed out the door.
I totally agree with Chris. That is how it would happen.
Yeah.
That is how it would go down.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to ask that question because that's something that I remember from that day, when I was on the phone. And I assumed, like, this word on the street, somebody had just talked to someone in an official position, but I don't know, you know, there's no way to corroborate it or anything. It just was bizarre because the building then collapsed a couple hours later after this phone call. So, you know, from a personal standpoint, it was a bizarre experience. I mean, like, the whole experience was horrific and bizarre, but.
Have you seen the video of the guy running around just before it collapsed, saying it's going to collapse? Get away, it's going to collapse.
I think I have seen that, yeah.
I've seen that too. Same thing. We would not, just because somebody was running around saying the building's going to collapse, i.e. somebody who isn't an official, I don't think that the fire department would just act on that information from an unsolicited person.
No.
Nobody in the building.
Lou has had his hand raised for about 15 minutes now.
Lou. Go. Please call on Lou.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Lou.
Talking to you here from Ormond Beach, Florida, which come this June after the firefighters thing, coming over to the beach, we'll have a gathering here. It's sometimes hot, but got some nice air conditioned rooms, and of course the beach breeze for you guys up north this June. Per my my just comment that I put into the chat, it's like Our Crowd. I didn't read that book, but it was a big bestseller, Our Crowd. And oftentimes we feel like we're preaching to the choir. I go beyond truther. I say we're creators, conspiracy realist, educator, activist, truther, organizer, reader, socializers. And I've not heard anything about Judy Wood. I don't know anything about her book, her theories about direct energy weaponry being used. I recall seeing pictures of burned cars on bridges, which she, I believe, used as evidence of this idea that directed energy weaponry was used in addition to what we know, which was the thermitic material that my mentor, my hero, my friend, Christopher Bolin, so well documented in his absolutely necessary book, Solving 9/11, which puts the blame squarely on the Mossad and the CIA and Silverstein. It's such a complex crime of the century that my question basically is, what about Judy Woods? What's her situation? Where is she? How she's involved? Where is she, please?
Somebody
Richard, you
from the
want to take
Boston
that?
group
Because
has
you're
to
the most
answer that one.
experienced here in terms of the big picture.
Okay, what was Gene saying?
Gene was not speaking. This is Lou Welge. Lou Andrew Welge.
Yeah, I heard. I heard you, Lou. Gene did try to say something though.
No.
Go ahead, Gene.
No, I wasn't going to talk about her. That's for sure.
Well, why is she?
This is not the time or place.
Well, why is she
Because we're
persona non
talking about.
grata? I mean, I know some people that are truthers, that identify as truthers, that say that she's got accurate information.
This is a general conversation.
What?
I mean, if we want to take the time to discuss that, we can, except that we've been on the phone for an awfully long time, and I'm thinking that our two guests of honor are not going to be entertained much by this discussion. I'd be happy to have it with anybody anytime.
I want to know if they
but
know
I don't think this is the
about it,
right time.
Richard.
I don't know anything about it. I don't know. I've heard discussions of direct energy, lasers, things like that, but I don't know enough to even comment on it. I would, because I'm running out of time. I'm going to have to leave, but I do want to bring this up with Chris because this is the first time you have two fire officers together, and I would like to share this observation with Chris. And I'm going to get you that DVD as soon as I get it from Richard, Chris.
Okay.
7. But you did see Bravo 7, and this is something that I wanted to bring out again with another firefighter. You saw the amount of fire in Building 7, and I know you've seen the fire that was in One Meridian Plaza and the fire especially that was at the First Interstate. At the First Interstate, you had spectacular fire lapping up to the floor above and the floor above that. You have 2 floors of flame, and it's incredible. With Building 7, to me, as a fire captain, and if you would have given me the order, I would have said, yes, sir. I wouldn't have said, are you nuts? I would not have said that. That to me was enough for an interior attack. The amount of fire that I saw there being controlled by sprinklers, I'm not saying it would be an easy attack, but that's not a defensive fire. First Interstate's a defensive fire where you have to pretty much let it burn itself out to where you can get ahead of it. But the amount of fire that I saw in the Building 7, I would have taken my crew in and attempted an interior attack. It's within the visual judgment of a fire officer that it's a doable offensive attack. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but from what I saw, I would have gone in.
There were only
security people that were turning people away from that building starting in the morning before the towers even came down.
Mm-hmm. Well, answer my question first, Chris.
definitely there were only a few floors that looked like they were on fire. The building wasn't raging inferno, and it wasn't out of control. Like you said, it wasn't an out of control fire that would stop, make you pause to assess. You do an assessment. You look at the building from all sides, and you make an assessment on whether or not interior attack is warranted. And from the outside, if I only saw a couple of floors burning as what we did see, then it definitely it was an operation that I would entertain. I would entertain going in the building and getting up to the fire floors and seeing what can be done. And you're constantly reassessing the situation, but from the initial size up, that building should have been through an aggressive interior attack, it should have been extinguished. The fire should have been put out, and the building shouldn't have collapsed.
You had broken windows. You had clear visibility. Smoke wasn't so thick that you couldn't see. You could see the sprinkler heads. I mean, that's pretty clear visibility. And with the windows broken like that, you would have enough ventilation that it would be dispersing the heat. That fire was contained, I would say, by the sprinklers. It looked like it was in a contained phase. And yeah, in my judgment, I would have attempted to make an interior attack. So I think that's just important to note to our guests.
Gene has his hand raised.
Yep, two quick things. One, Cat Waters and I went to Engine 55 in Little Italy and talked to a firefighter. He talked off the record and said he and his crew were about to walk into 7 when their chief stopped them and says, "You're not going in there." And he walked away, and he said, "Gene, 60 seconds later, that building came down behind us." Like, he had all intentions to go in there and fight. The other quick thing that I wanted to share real quick, if I may, William Rodriguez did a RICO lawsuit against a lot of people in New York, the big names that we keep talking about. If everybody knows, Willie Rodriguez is the maintenance worker of World Trade Center 1. And in his FOIA, or in his RICO lawsuit, this page was there. And I wanted to ask you if you guys have heard anything about this. There were large explosive charges in the sub-basements of both towers. And then the red part is really what I wanted to ask you about. FDNY employees were and continue to be under gag order imposed by senior FDNY officials on instructions of ex-CIA Director James Woolsey and others, which forbids them to talk about, among other things, multiple explosions at the World Trade Center on 9/11. You guys hear anything about that? Or
I have not.
Chris, any word of a gag order or hear any whiff of a gag order with the FDNY?
No.
Okay, 10-4. Thank you.
I just know it's extremely difficult to discuss that with a lot of the FDNY guys. But like I said, 20 years have gone by, and a lot of the emotion has died down, and I think they're asking more questions. I know that Glenn Corbett. So.
Oh, a lot of people are.
They are?
I think Susan was correct. You keep chipping away at the stone and you get results. And I think that the perception amongst a lot of people from one coast to the other has changed in regards to 9/11. and that they're not afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Gene, you might want to remind people when you were down at the World Trade Center on September 11th, the fire trucks that went by were all waving and giving you the high five.
Yep.
Is that accurate?
Multiple years. The first year I was down there by myself, just talking on the bullhorn, and they went by and actually slowed down, and I flashed the peace sign, and a couple firefighters in ladder 10 flashed the peace sign back at me. And then this past year with Sandra there, they were engaging, and was that last year or this year? They were honking at us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the honking there weren't any middle fingers. It was good honking.
Mm.
A good honk is a good honk.
Well, hey, Susan, I'm out of time. I'm out of time, but I just want to, before signing off, I want to thank Chris for coming on. It's nice. Your efforts were not wasted.
Oh,
We would want to see results quicker than 20 years, but you know, it's not wasted. And I appreciate you joining me on this. And just to everybody else, I really appreciate the tenacity and the follow through on this. Like I said, it hasn't been a top priority. Just, I have other things going on, but I realize I have a role to play, and I'm going to cooperate to the best of my ability.
Well, we want to thank both you and Chris, Boston 9/11, for coming on this web show, and hope you come back. This was really fascinating to listen to.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Raul. Thank you.
Thank you for having me too.
awesome.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay.
I
Happy New
wanted to
Year to
add-
everybody. Happy New
Happy
Year. to
New Year.
everybody.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
We'll pray for a year of peace.
Happy New Year, you guys.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks for
Good night,
I,
everyone.
I have a couple of Boston 9/11 things to talk about, and then we can finish up.
Oh,
Is that
all right.
okay?
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention Richard Kreshnick has made some headway with the Community Church of Boston in presenting. He wrote a letter, and I hope everybody got to read. And getting Graham McQueen's video on and proposing that they play it, and also that they allow some speakers from our group. So I'm waiting to hear back from Richard as to how that went down. But if you have a chance to read the letter, very well constructed, and hopefully we'll get to present that basically it's a left-leaning anti-war group that we would be addressing. So that's part of our go-to and going forward. And then for those that might not have been on the call earlier, I would urge everybody to go to the International Center for 9/11 Truth and Justice, and the symposium they're putting on January 7th. It's called Genocide in the Empire, and it talks about 9/11 and everything else that's going on in the world and how it's interconnected. So that's a good one to watch. And again, it's January 7th. And if you want to look it up, it's the International Center for 9/11 Justice in UK.
Everyone knows Kevin Ryan. He's going to be on it.
Right. And a whole bunch of notables from 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what I got. But this is a great afternoon, great time spent listening to the real deal, in my opinion.
Oh, yes. And onwards to Orlando.
Yes, money, money, money.
Yep. So check out protectingall.org, is it?
Yeah.
.org. And please send our people to Orlando and chip in $5 here and there. It'll happen.
You said that's protectingall.org?
Correct.
Yes,
Okay. Is
correct.
that where you can make a donation there?
Yes, you can. Yep, right on the site.
You can and you should.
Thanks.
There it is.
So Sue, we meet in another couple of weeks.
Yes.
And are there any other,
Yeah, January 11th, Fran Shore and Marty
oh,
Hop.
right.
Right.
And that should be a good one. That's, how do you deal with the public and broaching 9/11? Hopefully we'll get some,
Cognitive dissonance is what they're going to focus on.
right. And
then
I think,
we don't have the time yet, but on January 13th, we're going to have Paul Cayley.
okay, good. All right. Well, that's a wrap, I think, unless you have something, Sue, you want to mention.
No, I'm going to watch paint dry while I'm up downloading this recording.
Okay. That's a long
Can I
meeting.
say something?
Crack of dawn tomorrow morning for work.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Can I say something now?
Sorry, somebody's speaking?
Yeah,
Who
Jack
is it?
Bottomley.
Yes, Jack, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to ask everybody to please observe the media and the manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
And for example, there was a lot of they found a lot of false in what happened on October 7th, and it started coming out that IDF may have killed most or all of the people who died there, and but that was completely swept out everywhere because there's so much other news coming that. And I think it's all a trick. I studied this at MIT, and they do this. If bad news is coming in, they try to bury it with a flurry of other news. That there's always a grand strategist controlling these things, and so I just ask that people observe this, and also the very, very, very sophisticated reporting on Gaza. Is some of it says that there's a genocide going on there, but a lot of it doesn't. A lot of the American news reports don't say that at all, and so it's real manipulation.
They're bought and sold, but the thing is, we're into 2 hours and 15 minutes on this call, and as I say, I got to get up at the crack of dawn and stay up late to watch this thing download. So we don't want to go too deep into not directly related 9/11 subjects. But I appreciate your comments. I do, and I'm not going to engage further with a brand new topic, because then we'll never get off the phone. And I agree with you completely. It's not to say I don't agree, but we do have to stick on the subject.
Thank you all for coming.
Yep. Thank you for doing this. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris, I want to thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Chris,
Year.
I want
Chris.
to thank you for. I want to thank you, Chris.
See you
for
guys
that call that
soon.
you did with Susan and me. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Great. Yeah. All right. Thank
That
you.
was a great call.
It was. It's always good to see you, Chris.
Same here.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, good night.
everyone.